sometimes when I sit in this chair and get ready to do a review, sometimes I just like relish the moment because it means that, you're kind of in the journey with that film. Here I am sitting in this chair getting ready to talk about Dune 2. If you guys watch my channel, you guys know that I am a huge Dune fan. I love the first Dune, and if you looked at my trailer reactions for this one, I can't say I went into this movie unbiased. Like, I had very, very high expectations for it. And when these early reviews and reactions came out, it just, like, kind of was fueling my narrative. When things like that happen to you when you go into a movie, you kind of have to take a step back and, like, kind of reform yourself because you really don't want your expectations to get out of hand, because that's happened to me a handful of times where my expectations are so high for a movie and then it just doesn't reach those expectations, and you look back and you're like, I guess that was a little unrealistic. This movie was treading into that territory. For the last few days, I was like, okay, chill out, Jonathan. Just give yourself a minute. And so I was really concerned I'd walk out of this movie and being like, yeah, 5 stars, but still deep down inside maybe being a little upset that it's not like my favorite movie ever. And that's a big thing. I've always told people that, my favorite movie is Interstellar. I said, if any movie's going to beat it, sci-fi is my genre. I love sci-fi. I love action. I was like, if any movie's going to beat it, it'll probably be like a Dune movie or something like that. I've been saying that for years. It's way too close to call whether this is like a favorite movie or like even top 10 of mine. And so that's why I kind of reframed myself when I was done watching it, because I had friends with me and they're like, so did it live up? I'm like, give me a minute, because this movie is very overwhelming, as I would expect it to be. It throws a lot at you. It's very thematic but visually heavy, amazing score, and then you got Hans Zimmer's score to think about, a lot of stuff to think about coming out of this movie. It goes without saying, I loved this movie to death, and I did not have that syndrome where I watched the movie and deep down inside, part of me was a little disappointed because how unrealistic my expectations were. By some miracle, my expectations were met. Like, this movie really was everything I wanted it to be. Before, I thought that Dune Part 1 would be kind of the movie that Dune Part 2 is. By the time I went into Dune Part 1, I knew that like it'd be a setup movie. So now that I've, seen this movie, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is what like I really, really wanted. And that's just action sci-fi spectacle done to its finest. Denis Villeneuve doesn't usually have this much action in his movies, particularly his movies that are like sci-fi from before, like Blade Runner 2049 or Sicario maybe. They don't have this much action. Like, I was shocked by the amount of action in this movie. Like, this movie is action-packed from beginning to end. It is, like, general audience movie. I would say out of the last few Denis Villeneuve films that he's done, this is his most audience catering, and that's not a bad thing. There's actually a lot of jokes in this movie, a lot of really funny ones, particularly with Javier Bardem's character, who really impressed me. The entire cast across the board really impressed me. Timothée Chalamet was fantastic, Zendaya was fantastic, Austin Butler was fantastic, even Christopher Walken in his short amount of time was really, really good. Josh Brolin, everyone was excellent. Dave Bautista. It's a stacked cast, and I know I'm not saying other people, but the thing is, it kind of runs into that Oppenheimer syndrome, where you are so stunned by their star power, you kind of watch the movie, you're like, wait, why aren't they in it more? Particularly like with Austin Butler's character, because you're like, oh, Austin Butler is right off Elvis, or like Christopher Walken or Florence Pugh. You're just like, why weren't they in the movie more? And the funny thing is, I wanted this movie to be an hour longer. I could have watched another hour of this because it felt like there was so much in this movie to go through. And even though it's the second half of the book and we've already split it into 2 movies, it still feels like we are going almost breezing through a lot of stuff. And I guess that's my only complaint with the movie, is that I still feel like maybe it should have been half an hour longer, make us a 3-hour, 15-minute movie. That's kind of what I wanted Dune Part 2 to be. So when they released that runtime, it's still a long movie. It's still very, very long. But, I do think maybe it did need an extra 30 minutes, because there was a few moments in the movie where, it feels like we start a scene and then we cut to a different scene, and you're just kind of like, well, okay, I guess that was resolved. It's like logic jumps that are easy to make, but sometimes don't feel like they're fleshed out to its fullest extent. And those are also things that can just dissolve as issues with a rewatch. But this is just the first experience, and honestly the most important one, considering that I'm about to review the movie. But that's my only complaint with the movie. Sometimes we would go from like a place and you think about, okay, I would get a little curious about what's going to happen, but then it just cuts to it being done, and you're just like, huh. And that's more so stuff within like the first act, or maybe even a little bit in the second act. By the time you get to the third act, everything feels like it's fleshed out to its fullest. A spectacle is like never short in this movie. There's tons of like amazing sequences in this movie. This is being an overused statement, and I'm going to reiterate it once again as a critic. You watch this movie and you're going from the best scene in the movie to the next best scene in the movie. Everything is just kind of jogging around in your brain after you're done watching it. Even right now, I'm remembering scenes. Oh yeah, that's cool, and that's great, and that's cool, and that's great. Another amazing performance in this movie is Rebecca Ferguson. They expand on her character a lot. It's a lot of character expansion, a lot of lore expansion, a lot of expansion technically, and so everything just kind of overwhelmed me. The biggest thing kind of stakes that kind of like hinges on this movie on how it'll age for me personally is a rewatch. And I feel like a rewatch is needed. Maybe it'll make my I genuinely don't know if a rewatch will make some of my issues go away or if they will just stay there. I genuinely understand why people say they need to see it again. Usually with the Denis Villeneuve film is dense, but it's relatively slow paced, and so you can kind of digest it very easily. Yeah, this movie is probably his longest taking to digest. I saw this movie about 2 hours ago. It's been done for about 2 hours. I've just done nothing but think about it. That's what all amazing movies do. You're done and you're just thinking about it. Talked about it, thought about it, and just like all these things going through my mind. I just genuinely just want to say thank you to Denis Villeneuve because this movie is just so excellent. Greg Fraser knocked it out of the park, and that's the thing. I'm looking for original things to say, but that hasn't already been said by other critics. But like I could just reiterate it, and I guess I will. Greg Fraser knocks it out of the park. It's easily his best looking movie yet. Better looking than The Batman. Better looking than Dune Part 1. Hans Zimmer, this is some of his finest work. Even better than the first Dune score. I hope he gets an Oscar for this. It's everything that I just expected. Technically, Denis Villeneuve really infuses his atmosphere and his tone. I would say he usually does this dull tone that's very present in the first Dune, but isn't as present here because it's like a full-on war movie, so not a lot of dull stuff is happening. But whenever he can bring forth that Denis Villeneuve moodiness, he really does, and it always shines through. And I think everything that he's able to do out of production design is fantastic. His collaboration with production design, costumes, cinematography, everything just blends together. It makes this beautiful piece of artwork that are these Dune films. This movie, honestly, could have been like a solid 30 minutes longer. When the movie ended, I was shocked that it ended. Like, I thought the movie had 15 minutes to go. When it ended, I was like, oh wow, we're done? It goes by so fast, and so much happens, and everything that you see is great. There was so many moments of this movie where I was just thought to myself, my god, this is just a fantastic movie. The part towards the third act, when everything was like happening, and it's like the all-out war movie that you kind of thought it would be. When some of these shots are just unfolding before your eyes, I couldn't just help but feel overwhelmed with emotion because it really feels like everything is just so coordinated, precise. It doesn't just feel like eye candy that you're used to. It feels like art. It's art at a grand scale that you don't usually see too often. Done on an IMAX screen, the Hans Zimmer score blasting. Just so many these things colliding, and I'm just watching it, and I'm almost crying because you don't get theater like experiences like this every day. I got a headache watching this movie, but what I call the good headache, which has only happened to me like a handful of times while watching a film in the theater. It's happened to me when I'm watching a movie like at my house, but being in a theater and being completely immersed to the point where you're so like stressed out and wanting to know what happens next, you're so overwhelmed with your senses because of this theatrical experience to the point where you get a headache. That's a big compliment. Like, I still have the headache right now. I have it right now. Maybe it's the sound of my own voice talking, and the fact that it's what time? Midnight. It could be that. It's a good headache, so I'm clinging on to it because they don't come very often. It's happened with Interstellar, it's happened with Mission Impossible Fallout, and now add to the list Dune Part 2. Like I said, I need to think about this when it comes to like if this is like a favorite of mine. I need a minute. This is easily going to be the best movie of the year. Like, there's no competition I can foresee like beating this film when it comes to my personal enjoyment. I highly doubt a movie will beat this. Thank you, Denis Villeneuve. This is I don't know if this is his best movie. A lot of people are saying that, but I'm a huge Denis Villeneuve fan. I will say it's very, very close to being his best. My favorite of his is Blade Runner 2049, and I'm playing tug of war right now. Which one do I like more? But like I said, a lot of these things hinges on me rewatching it again and seeing if some of my issues stick, or like, well, let's be honest, my one issue sticks. We'll see. I need to rewatch it. I'm tired. I'm overwhelmed. But I wanted to get this review done right now because I can't do it tomorrow, and I don't think I can do it the next day, and I didn't want to wait. So I'll just edit this over that time and have it uploaded, and by the time you guys see this, it'll be a few days from now. And the thing is, what do I score this? My answer is that it's 5 stars. It's above a 9.5. What exact score? I couldn't tell you because it's a lot of stuff. It's very, very high to the point where I just don't know exactly how high to put it. So I'll just say 5 stars, 5 out of 5. A rough number, this is a working number, 9.7 out of 10. Something like that, 9.8, 9.9, give it a 10, I don't know. But like it's just so mesmerizing. It's hard to put into words, obviously, because a lot of times when I find myself rambling in a video like this, kind of like just thinking about the film, it's because I'm struggling to put into words how this movie made me feel. Because, it's an experience. An experience isn't necessarily something you can always describe. Sometimes it's an emotion that you can't put a word to. It's just something that you wish that you get out of him and something that you hope for, and this movie provided that. So I'm ecstatic. I know I don't sound ecstatic. My concern was that in this review people would be like, because it's happened a few times before where I seem kind of dull. I'm like, it's a masterpiece, and then people will be like, do you believe it's a masterpiece? But the thing is, it's midnight. It is a masterpiece. It's the Empire Strikes Back of our generation, as people are saying. It's like the level of the Dark Knight. It is that movie. It's up there. It's just a matter of how up there is it, and that's where people can get hyperbolic. People can just jump the gun and say, oh, it's already this, it's this, it's this. But it's something that is a question that can't be answered immediately. It's something that needs time. I need time to digest this, but all I can say right now is that I'm really happy with the movie, and I know there's stuff I'm forgetting to say because this movie is jam packed of stuff, phenomenal stuff. But all I can say is that everything is phenomenal. I'm happy. Yeah, and I'm also tired. So yeah, like, share, subscribe, and stuff like that. And adios.